What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we're going to rank the albums of Architects.
God only knows what we were born to burn!
And hey, if you'd like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, Architects have had a very interesting progression along their career, and I'm really excited to finally kind of talk my way through all those albums, and let's just jump right in 2006 with Nightmares. So this is the only album to not have Sam Carter on vocals. It actually has Matt Johnson doing the vocals. He has more of kind of like the bled sound in his delivery, which is cool. And it brings me to, I was not aware of Architects at the time that this came out, but if I had, I would have gobbled this album up because it was so much in the vein of other albums I was listening to just like that. Norma Jean, The Chariot, It Dies Today. There's even some kind of random Every Time I Die sort of vocals that pop up here and there. The guitars definitely have a lot of the Dillinger Escape Plan influence, and it's pretty solid. Like, it's an impressive record. It's definitely kind of derivative of the time, but I quite enjoyed it, and re-listening to it, I have to give it at least B tier, actually. Really, really solid. I wasn't anticipating giving their first album such a high rating, especially since we didn't have like a solidified lineup at this point, but there you have it. All right, next up, we've got Ruin in 2007. So this is the first album to feature Sam Carter on vocals. Very raw at this point. Like, Sam does not really sound like the Sam that we know today, especially with the new album coming out and everything, but pretty impressive. Already signed to Century Media at this point. Just 2 albums in, still very mathy. The vocals are just kind of like straight up hardcore vocals on this one. It almost reminds me more of like Hatebreed or something. It's a little bit more simplified. Not a big fan of Sam's delivery on this one, but it's kind of cool to go back and hear just how far he's come in his development of his vocal style. I can kind of hear them toying with the songwriting on this one, still kind of trying to find their sound. But honestly, I actually kind of prefer the debut for just how concise it is too, because it was shorter than this one, and I get bored in a lot of places, especially again due to the vocals on this one. So personally, for me, I'm gonna go ahead and put this one at C tier. All right, 2009, we get Hollow Crown, and here comes the djent. Like, this is where, you know, you start to hear that even more gradual move towards what we know as Architect sound, but still very raw, still that kind of 2000s metalcore vibe of other albums in this era. Sam sounds so pissed off. Like, it's amazing to me how he went from that last album to this one, and he is just so vicious on this one, just shrieking his guts out. Still not really sounding like the Sam we know today, but much better, I think, in terms of his approach to this one. Heavier parts are heavier, and the melodic parts here are much better implemented as well. I absolutely love the kind of under-oathy singing parts on this album, especially on like Elegance and We Are All Alone. Honestly, I kind of like the singing better on this album than some of the later albums. I also love the like crazy drumming on Borrowed Time. It's a big step up from the last album. I'm going to go ahead and give this one A tier. Like, really good stuff, really enjoyable, holds up well. I kind of like that it still has a little bit of rawness to it. So if you haven't checked out this album, definitely give it a listen. All right, then we've got the Here and Now in 2011. Sam sounding more and more like himself on this one. Like, we're getting very close to kind of the vocal style I recognize from him, which makes sense because he's kind of leaning more into that scream singing style that he's known best for, and he was actually getting vocal training during the recording of this album to try to extend his range, and you definitely hear it. But it is kind of for better or worse. The reactions to this album, from what I could muster, were kind of split, because it is a very sing-songy record. Like, coming off of their super heavy stuff from the last couple, this one's almost like an emo album, honestly. There is a lot of singing on here, and not just scream singing, like just straight up singing. It almost sounds like a brand new album or something in that territory, which personally I really like. I'm a fan of those bands as well, so I have a really great time with this album. On the heavier side, though, you also get an appearance from Greg Puciato of the Dillinger Escape Plan, but then you also get Comeback Kids Andrew Neufeld. I think in particular, Stay Young and Year In, Year Out are a nice segue into the sound we're about to get on the next album. You can very clearly hear, like, that's the blueprint almost for where we'd be going with that one. But yeah, I'm kind of A or B on this one. I really actually enjoy it. I know a lot of people maybe don't because they want things to be a bit heavier. But I thought they did a really fantastic job. I'm actually going to go ahead and put it at A tier for now. All right, but then we've got Daybreaker. This is the game changer right here. 2012, after years of lingering in relative obscurity, I feel like it all pays off with this one. And, you know, they didn't get huge off of this one, but this is like the beginning, though. This is where architects become architects. It's a total culmination of everything that came before it, equal parts blistering and melodic, but also filled with venom and heart at the same time, as corny as that may sound. Excellent, very focused record, just so many good things. And again, like, this is architects doing architects. Like, they very much, like, this is the sound they had been striving for a long time, and they absolutely nailed it. I'm going to go ahead and put that one at S tier. All right, but now we're going to move into my personal favorite. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out right at the beginning and jump into, like, this is also, I'm a little biased because this is where I really jumped on the train with architects, and I love Lost Forever, Lost Together. 2014, this is a flawless album. This is, in my mind, Architects' best album, easily. So many amazing parts. I've already played a clip at the top and a clip coming into this one, but I also wanted to just sort of sample along some of my favorite moments. But yeah, you open things up with Gravedigger, with that D beat. Better and then some. And this is the blech. This is the blech, Sam. And the amazing riffs. So much fun. Obviously, like, this has been done to death now, stylistically. Oh, these choruses. And then Broken Cross, I already played the clip from that one, but it's one of my favorite re-quotable moments. So freaking heavy, man. The lyrics are great. The songwriting's great. Again, like, so many people aped the style after the fact, and now there's a million Architects clones running around, but this is the blueprint right here, and you can't get better than it. Love the gang vocals there. Devil Is Near, excellent. Cancer, just a lot of, like, passion and thoughtfulness and, like, kind of tearjerker moments, honestly. Colony Collapse is great too. You got this big expansive journey. It's kind of progressive and it builds to this amazing climax. Youth is Wasted on the Young, another classic. I mean, you can't say anything bad about this album. At least I can't. Like, to me, easily the best. The GOAT, if you will. And as I'm going along, too, I'm going to kind of put these also right to left in order, in case you're wondering, like, my overall ranking. So let's put that at number 1, Daybreaker, close number 2. All right, moving along, we've got All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us from 2016. And people loved this album too. I mean, coming off that last one, who could blame them? It's kind of more of the same, though, is the thing. Like, I feel like they hit a peak and then they come down a little bit on this one. It's not quite as consistent. I know some people choose this as their personal favorite, but for me, it's kind of Lost Forever, Lost Together Part 2, which is fine, because damn, there are some good songs on here too. Nihilist. Sam just sounds so pissed on this record too. More of those great, like, vocal break moments. Downfall, also. Lots of great groovy things on here. And I talk about this a little bit in my upcoming review of the new album. But obviously, this is, as most of you know, the last album with guitarist Tom Searle, who passed away from cancer. And it's nice to at least, like, hear his mark on this, and also the turmoil that the band was going through on songs like Gone with the Wind. You can just hear, like, the heartbreak in it, and that may sound, like, corny and cliche, but it just feels so genuine, and it gives me goosebumps, honestly. Match Made in Heaven was the lead single, another great one on here, and plenty of other great deeper cuts on here, too. This is definitely one of my more re-listened Architects albums, but I don't give it quite as much credit as Lost Together, Lost Forever, because to me it does feel like a little bit of a retread of ideas, but I'm still going to put it at A tier. I put it in about third place. All right, but then we've got Holy Hell in 2018, and honestly, this is where things start to go a little bit sour for me, which is a little bit sad because on the front end, I wanted to love this album, just knowing that, you know, this is the first album without Tom. It's very much a kind of tribute to him, but you hear the changes in songwriting, and just overall as an album, it doesn't come together for me. Like, I forced myself to like re-listen and re-listen. Like, I wanted to be in love with this album, and it seemed like no matter what I did, it just wasn't clicking. Now, that's not to say that there aren't great moments, especially like the Hereafter. Speaking of tearjerkers, man, this is a just tragic song to listen to, and that's why I chose the clip too. When he gets into the chorus, I think that lyric is one of my favorite Architects lyrics of all time. Just that imagery of like actually physically fighting with broken bones because you're just so like in the fight that it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, that visual to me, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it. So I love that. I absolutely love this song and love re-listening to it. So would put it at maybe even in like their top 10 songs of all time. Also like Mortal After All. It's another standout. Cool guitars on this one. Sam sounds great on these. Seventh Circle too. Like, generally the heavier tracks are the ones I really enjoy on here. But then you've also got some softer tracks that Sam's singing's just not up to par on this one. I'm gonna try to find some of the parts here. Yeah, like, I don't know, it has like a weird, almost like the production's weird. It has a weird like auto-tuney quality to some of it. And whereas I really loved it on like even like the Here and Now, which is a super sing-songy record, it just sounds different. I just don't think it's the singing at the best, and the songwriting too feeling a little meandering. So yeah, overall, one of my least favorite Architects albums, and I know for some people that's going to be an unpopular opinion. I would definitely still, I'll put it at C tier, but I definitely still put it ahead of this earlier album. All right, and then last but not least, the main event, maybe for some of you, 2021, we've got For Those That Wish to Exist, and I will have a full album review that, depending on when you're watching this, may already be up. But yeah, I will have a lot more intensive thoughts about this album as a whole, because I actually do have a lot of thoughts about it. But overall, just my thinking is it's a mixed bag. It's a bit of a mixed bag. As you can see, it's very long. 15 tracks is too much, if you ask me, and it does start to feel bloated and overgrown, so that brings its rating down a bit. And then also we've got some shifts in songwriting, of course, like with the lead singles you've heard. I've got to be careful more about what I'm sampling on here, because, you know, some of this isn't even out yet. But obviously, much more like mainstream approach, which makes even more sense, though, in context. Like, I that's part of why I want to do this tier list, is that it can feel like, to me, especially as somebody who really jumped on the train with Lost Forever, Lost Together, that this is a sudden departure. But when you take it in their entire discography and see that, like, they've changed over the entire course of their career, really, and that was just like one snapshot. So it seems like maybe this is the next direction for them. But I have described it kind of jokingly as sort of like Imagine Dragons core. Feels very radio friendly, maybe a little overproduced, but there's some really cool stuff on here too. Like, they've done some symphonic elements in the past, but it is to a completely different level on this album, and those are my favorite moments. Especially like Dead Butterflies has grown on me a ton. Probably my favorite of the singles. Just with that brass and the strings, how massive it sounds. And yeah, it's not as heavy and intense as their older stuff, but it's hard not to get wrapped up in the atmosphere. And, you know, if this is the direction they want to go, it feels natural for them to do this, then I say do it. And I also consider it to be like an opportunity to bring new people into the fold who might otherwise not listen to the heavier stuff too. They'll backtrack and be like, whoa, this is different. So overall, it's decent. It's decent. It's just bloated, a little bit over ambitious, I would say. But I think they're onto something, and there's something to be said about that. So I'm not going to give you my more intensive thoughts again. Will all be in the full review with a more concise writing and everything too. But honestly, I'm going to put that at kind of the low end of the B tier. So if we're ranking these in order, again, it's from right to left. So we've got dun, 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 just like that. But now it is your turn. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of Architects? What's your favorite album? What's your least favorite album? And why? How would you rank them? And let's have a discussion down there. And hey, stick around because I got a whole playlist of these tier lists that you can check out. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.